Hunger is more than an emptiness of the stomach, it is a curse that clings to the soul. For generations, the villagers in a remote valley lived under whispers of an ancient famine. When desperation turned men into monsters and kin devoured kin, those who died with bellies hollow and throats dry never found rest. Their spirits twisted into things both human and inhuman: hungry ghosts, bloated bellies, needle-thin throats, mouths that could never be satisfied. When the winds howl and the night grows heavy, their cries seep through the earth: hungry, feed us. This is the tale of that village, where the curse awoke again. A tale of moans in the storm, tombs torn open, cries in the bamboo grove, and the final night when no one was left alive. Chapter 1. The hollow stomach in the stormy night. The wind howled through the leaking thatched roofs, carrying with it the crackling lashes of the season's first storm. The little village, hidden deep in the valley, was swallowed by a pitch-black night. Thunder roared, lightning split the sky, but inside each hut, another sound could be heard. A knock, soft, hesitant, but persistent. Knock, knock, knock. Old Madame Lan, who had lived over 70 years in the village, pulled the tattered blanket up to her chin. No villager would ever knock at doors during such a night. Her heart pounded as she listened. The knocking continued, slow and deliberate, weaving between the pounding of the rain. Knock, knock, hun-gry. The voice was thin, like wind whistling through a crack, but it rang right in her ears. Madame Lan bit her lip until it bled, muttering trembling prayers. Don't hear it, don't answer. The hungry ghosts are looking for someone to feed them. Then came the sobbing, dozens of voices. Men and women, young and old, some whined, others groaned, and children wailed as if starved, all blending into one bone-chilling chorus. Lightning flashed, illuminating a figure outside her porch. A bent, skeletal body with a grotesquely swollen belly stood hunched against her door. Its bony hand pounded heavily against the rotting wood. Rain poured down its head, but the hollow sockets and gaping mouth, split almost to the ears, were clear as day. Hungry, Madame Lan screamed and collapsed. But suddenly, silence. When she dared open her eyes, the figure was gone. Only long trails of mud smeared across the porch remained, stretching out into the storm. By morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Children swore they saw footprints under the ancient banyan tree by the gate, bare skeletal feet, stamped deep into the wet earth. The elders gathered, whispering with pale faces. One shuddered and declared, "The curse of the hungry ghosts has awakened once more." Chapter 2. The Tombs Without Incense. That evening, gray clouds pressed low over the bamboo grove. At the roadside tea house, a group of youths argued heatedly about the night's events. Old Madame Lan must have imagined it. One scoffed. Imagined? And what about those skeletal footprints under the banyan? Another hissed. Their curiosity burned hotter than their fear. They dared each other to visit the abandoned cemetery at the edge of the village, a forbidden place where no one had set foot for decades. Legend said it was the resting ground of famine victims, their forsaken spirits twisted into hungry ghosts. Torches lit, machetes in hand, they trudged through waist-high weeds into the graveyard. The air was damp, reeking of moss. Tomb mounds jutted up unevenly, nameless, neglected, choked by wild grass. "Hey, look there," one stammered. A grave had been dug open. Fresh earth, black and wet, gave off a fetid stench. In the pit lay a shriveled corpse, skin stretched taut over bone, eyes wide open, still glowing faintly red in the flicker of the torches. Before anyone could breathe, a rasp escaped its mouth. "Hungry!" The boys screamed. One dropped his torch, and they all bolted, tumbling down the slope in terror. The fallen torch flickered, revealing nearby mounds where the soil had begun to collapse inward, as if hands were clawing upward from beneath. And then, pale fingers, stripped of flesh, burst through the dirt, scratching, digging, the night air filled with whispering. "Feed us, so hungry, blood, meat." The boys fled into the dark, never daring to look back. But from that night onward, villagers swore that the abandoned cemetery glowed faintly with an eerie, ember-like red light rising from the forsaken tombs. Chapter 3. The Curse from a Century Past. For days after the cemetery incident, the entire village buzzed with fear. Some accused the youths of lying, while others swore on their lives that the corpse had opened its eyes and groaned for food. That night, the villagers gathered in the decrepit communal hall. Oil lamps flickered weakly, smoke curling in the stale air. The village headman, Old Khan, bent with age, hair white as ash, hobbled forward, voice rasping. "Do you know why our ancestors forbade anyone from setting foot in that old cemetery? It is because that ground buried an entire generation who perished in the Great Famine." He paused, coughing violently, then continued, his eyes clouded with dread. "Over 100 years ago, our village starved, crops failed, granaries emptied, and bodies fell one after another. Those who remained alive wasted away, bellies flat, eyes hollow. In desperation, some devoured their own kin. Flesh was hacked apart, blood spilled across the temple yard. The wailing of children mixed with the sound of chewing. That was when our village earned its curse." The hall fell into heavy silence. The wind outside moaned like the starving dead. Khan went on, his voice shaking. "The dead of that famine never passed on. Their souls warped into hungry ghosts. Their bodies twisted, bellies swollen like drums, throats as narrow as needles, cursed to never eat their fill. Wherever there is the scent of blood and flesh, they crawl forth, groaning for food. Whoever listens to their call is drained until nothing remains but skin clinging to bone." A woman whimpered in the corner. "Then, the curse never ended?" The old man's murky eyes gleamed with sorrow and fury. "No, because the sin was not only starvation. It was cannibalism. The village feasted on its own. That crime bound their souls to this earth, condemning them forever." In the dark hall, faces turned pale, rain tapped on the roof like bony fingers. And amid the sound, faint noises crept in, chewing, groaning, the scratching of nails against wet soil. Suddenly, a cold wind blew out the oil lamps. In pitch-black silence, a whisper slithered across the room. "Feed us." Chaos erupted. Villagers toppled over each other, shrieking. When they relit the lamps, a long streak of mud smeared the floor before the ancestral altar, as if skeletal feet had just dragged themselves through. Chapter 4. The Cry in the Bamboo Grove. Night fell quickly, and the wind shrieked through the old bamboo forest at the village's edge. The tall stalks clashed against each other with a dry, grating sound, like countless teeth gnashing together in the dark. In recent days, parents forbade their children from stepping outside after sundown, but even the strictest vigilance could not stop tragedy. That evening, a boy named Kin, 14 years old, vanished. He told his mother he was going to wash his feet by the well. He never returned. Panic swept the village. Men lit torches and scoured the fields, the riverbank, every hut and thicket, but the boy was gone without a trace. Near midnight, when the wind roared fiercest, it began. From the bamboo grove came the sound of weeping, thin, mournful sobs, rising and falling, sometimes near, sometimes far. The villagers froze. It was a child's voice. "Mother, I'm so hungry." The torches trembled in their hands. Everyone knew that Grove was once a mass grave during the famine years, where starved bodies had been buried. It was said the hungry ghosts roamed there. And yet, this voice was Kin's. Familiar, pitiful, calling out for his mother. One man, too shaken to resist, stepped into the grove with his torch. The light flickered across gnarled bamboo roots, a carpet of rotting leaves, the air thick with dampness. The crying stopped. Instead, a stench rose from the darkness, thick, metallic, the reek of fresh blood. And then, deep within the bamboo, a figure drifted past, a woman-like shadow, belly grotesquely swollen, dragging across the soil, arms skeletal and reaching. The man screamed, hurling his torch as he fled. The others, watching from the grove's edge, saw something even worse. Dozens of pairs of glowing red eyes blinked open in the thicket. Gleaming like embers, a chorus of raspy moans erupted. "Hungry, so hungry. Feed us, blood." The villagers fled in terror, stumbling through the mud, but when they glanced back, they saw skeletal footprints gouged deep into the wet earth, trailing from the grove toward the village. From that night on, no one dared enter the bamboo forest again. Yet, every midnight, the crying returned, Kin's voice, sobbing for his mother, tangled with the groaning of bamboo stalks grinding in the wind, like the teeth of 100 starving corpses. Chapter 5. The Reflection in the Water. At dawn, heavy mist clung to the village. The old stone well at the center, once a gathering place for water, had become a source of dread. How? A 17-year-old boy with a defiant nature scoffed at the rumors. He had heard the stories of sobbing in the bamboo grove and whispers of hungry ghosts. But he laughed them off. Ghosts don't crawl out of graves. He sneered. You're all just frightened old fools. Ignoring warnings, he strode to the well with his bucket. The elders called after him, but he waved dismissively. The well was deep and mossy, its stone rim slick with years of damp. Hao leaned over and dipped his ladle into the still water. But when he looked down, the surface did not reflect his face. Instead, dozens of gaunt, hollow faces stared back, eyes sunken, mouths split wide, lips torn and bleeding. Hao froze. Then the voices rose up from the water, murmuring in unison. Feed us, hungry. The water rippled violently. A skeletal hand burst from the surface and seized his wrist. Ice cold, hard as iron. Hao screamed, thrashing wildly. Villagers rushed over, seeing him dragged downward as if the well itself was swallowing him. Several men grabbed him and hauled with all their strength. At last, they tore him free. His wrist was bruised purple. 5 distinct finger marks gouged deep into his flesh. But the worst was his eyes. Hao's pupils were glazed, haunted. Whenever he looked into water, he claimed he still saw those starving faces staring back at him. Mouths working hungrily. At night he woke screaming, gasping the same word over and over. Hungry, hungry. From that day on, no one dared draw water from the well, even under the bright noon sun. Villagers swore they glimpsed emaciated shadows rising from the depths, waiting to crawl out. Chapter 6. The Feast of Rotting Flesh. After the well incident, terror spread deeper through the village. Whispers swirled that the hungry ghosts were no longer confined to their graves. They had entered the lives of the living. Families locked their doors at dusk, tied charms to their doors, and huddled with their livestock inside. But the ghosts were not to be denied. At dawn one morning, villagers awoke to find the pen of old Ba eerily silent. When they went to check, horror froze their blood. His prized ox, strong, healthy, the pride of his household, was gone. In its place lay a heap of torn hide and a skeleton picked clean. Blood soaking the earth in dark puddles that reeked of iron. Cries rang out, drawing neighbors who stood aghast. The ox's belly had been ripped open, its innards strewn about, gnawed as though by desperate jaws. Not far away, an entire flock of chickens had been slaughtered. Their bodies were twisted, feathers clumped with gore, skin sucked tight against bone. Eyes stared glassy and wide, as if the birds had died mid-scream. That night, none in the village could sleep. In the wind they heard it, the sound of chewing. Wet, urgent, 100 mouths tearing into meat, gnashing bone, gulping greedily. One old woman whispered that she saw, in the moonlight across the field, pale shapes squatting, their swollen bellies sagging, their eyes glowing red. They tore at bones with skeletal hands, stuffing shards of flesh into their mouths. The sound of swallowing echoed over the fields. The feast of rotting flesh has begun, she muttered, her voice breaking. From then on, no one dared leave their animals in the pens. Cattle and poultry were hauled into homes, tied beside their owners. But fear festered. Everyone knew the truth. The hungry ghosts would not be satisfied with livestock for long. Their bellies craved something richer, something hotter, something that still throbbed with human blood. Chapter 7. The Night of the Blood Moon. That night, the sky itself seemed cursed. The full moon rosé, glowing not silver but a deep, ominous red, casting its bloody light across the fields. The air was heavy, still, and stank faintly of rot. Families barred their doors and huddled together inside, whispering prayers. Children sobbed quietly. The elderly muttered chants, and no one dared strike a light. Near midnight, dogs began to bark at the edge of the village. At first one, then two, then a chorus of frantic howls. Then silence, cut off as if by strangling hands. Out in the crimson fields, shapes began to appear, dozens, then scores, gaunt bodies staggering forward. Bellies grotesquely distended, eyes glowing like coals, their mouths gaped wide, drool and blood dripping onto the soil. Hungry. The moans rose in unison, rasping, hollow. The sound rattled doors and froze hearts. Inside the huts, Villagers clutched one another, trembling. Then a scream tore through the night. It came from the edge of the village, the home of Madame Mao. Doors splintered, shadows surged inside. What followed chilled every soul within earshot. The sounds of ripping, shrieking, bones snapping, and then, silence. Through the cracks of shuttered windows. Neighbors saw it. Inside the house, the hungry ghosts crouched like animals, tearing flesh from bone. Blood splattered the walls. Limbs dangled from skeletal fingers, gnawed to the marrow. Above it all, the red moon blazed, shining like a witness to the massacre. From that night forward, villagers whispered the name with dread. The night of the blood moon. The night when the hungry ghosts no longer lingered in shadows, but walked openly among the living, feasting on human flesh, and they would never stop. Chapter 8. The Call of the Hollow Belly. After the night of the blood moon, the village was paralyzed with terror. Doors were bolted, fires extinguished, and no one dared speak aloud. But silence could not protect them. The hungry ghosts began to call out to the living. At first it was faint, a whisper threading through the midnight air. Eat, hungry, eat, so good. But the voices slithered directly into the ears of the villagers. Some rose from their mats like sleepwalkers, eyes glassy, muttering as they stumbled outside. No pleas, no restraints could hold them back. They walked straight into the fields and vanished into the dark, never to return. One old man, frail and starving, began to laugh uncontrollably when he heard the whispers. Sitting before his family, he scooped fistfuls of ash from the incense burner and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing greedily until he choked and died, his lips smeared with soot. His eyes rolled back. A young mother, cradling her child, suddenly stiffened in the night. Her hands clawed at the walls, her voice guttural. Meat, blood, feed me. Her husband tried to restrain her, but she thrashed wildly, her eyes glowing red, nails tearing until her fingers bled. They bound her and gagged her, but she screamed like a starving beast until dawn. Some villagers escaped the trance, but they wasted away afterward. Their bellies swelled grotesquely, their eyes reddened, their hunger insatiable. No matter how much they ate, they remained starving, gnawing endlessly with trembling jaws. Suspicion spread. Were they still human? Or already ghosts hiding in human skin? Each night, the chorus grew louder. We are hungry. We want to eat. Blood. Flesh. Feed us. It was a hunger without end. A gnawing emptiness that echoed not only outside, but inside the minds of the living. Chapter 9. The Woman in Mourning White. After the nights of whispers, no parent dared let their child out of sight. Men stood guard in shifts. Charms were nailed to doors, and those who had once fallen into trances were bound with rope. But dread only deepened. One moonless night, dogs at the far edge of the village howled in terror. When the villagers peered out, they saw her, a woman in a funeral shroud, pure white, dragging her steps along the muddy road. Her hair hung loose, veiling her face, but what made every heart seize was her belly, grotesquely swollen, taut as if it might burst, while her arms were withered sticks tipped with long blackened nails. Wherever she passed, infants screamed uncontrollably, choking as if strangled. Some went limp in their mother's arms, eyes rolled back, silent as the grave. At the communal yard, the woman stopped. A gust of wind flung her hair aside, revealing a corpse-white face, hollow sockets, a mouth torn wide to the ears. From her swollen belly erupted a cacophony of wails, as though hundreds of starving souls were trapped inside. Blood, feed me, hungry. A panicked young man hurled a stone at her. It struck her belly, and the distended flesh split open, spewing foul, reeking slime. From the gash, skeletal hands writhed outward, clawing at the earth like worms the size of men. The villagers shrieked and scattered. When they dared look back, the woman had vanished. Only a stinking pool remained, bubbling with the stench of death. From that night on, the villagers whispered in dread. The hungry ghosts had taken form in the shape of a mourning woman. Whenever a child cried in the night, they knew the white figure was roaming once more, carrying her hollow womb of endless hunger. Chapter 10. The Shattered Altars. After the night the woman in mourning white appeared, despair sank deeper into the village. Children no longer dared cry aloud. Adults dared not strike a lamp. Only one fragile hope remained: the ancestral altars. Every household burned incense day and night, They believed only the spirits of their ancestors could shield them from the hungry ghosts that now prowled openly. Smoke curled thick in the air. Prayers muttered endlessly. But that fragile faith was soon destroyed. At dawn, old Madame Land discovered her altar overturned. The incense urn lay shattered on the floor. Ash scattered like gray blood. The ancestral tablets had been smeared with streaks of crimson, as if clawed by bloody nails. She collapsed in tears. Our ancestors, even they are not safe. Word spread quickly. One by one, households found their own altars desecrated. In some homes, ancestral portraits were torn to shreds, dripping with blood. In others, the urns had been gutted and stuffed with fragments of bone. That night, as villagers huddled in the dark, they heard faint rattling. The incense bowls on their altars trembled violently, then toppled, spilling ash across the floor. The smell of iron filled the room. From the shadows, a pale shape emerged, a hunched figure with a grotesquely distended belly. It crouched before the altar, bony fingers scooping fistfuls of incense ash and stuffing it greedily into its mouth. Chewing with loud crunches. Hungry. Ash will do, but blood makes us full. The family screamed and fled outside. When they returned, the figure was gone, only a trail of slimy filth smeared from the altar to the doorway. The elders wept bitterly. The hungry ghosts have defiled the altars. They no longer fear our ancestors. We have no protection left. From that night onward, incense flames sputtered out by themselves, leaving every home in darkness. Chapter 11. The Night of Escape. When the altars lay in ruins, the villagers knew there was no sanctuary left. Prayers were useless, charms powerless. The only hope was to flee the cursed land. One night, more than 10 households gathered in silence. They packed what little food remained, clutched their children, and waited for the cover of midnight. If they could reach the southern forest, perhaps they could break free of the hungry ghost's domain. The sky was moonless, starless. They trudged along the muddy road, sandals squelching softly, mothers muffling the cries of their little ones. The night was cold and heavy, each breath thick with dread. At first, all was still, but as they neared the edge of the forest, the wind suddenly rose, shrieking through the trees. The rustle of leaves became whispers, hundreds of voices moaning together. Hungry. Where will you run? No escape. The villagers froze, then bolted forward, but when they pushed through the undergrowth, their hearts sank. They stood once more before the ancient banyan at the village gate. Again and again they tried, plunging into the forest, stumbling in desperation, but every path curved back. Every frantic run ended at the same place. The cursed village had sealed them in. Terror spread. A trembling elder fell to his knees, sobbing, "We are trapped. The forest itself has become their snare." Then came the footsteps, dry, dragging, crunching in the underbrush. Shadows emerged from the tree line, figures gaunt and swaying, bellies grotesquely bloated, eyes glowing like embers. Their mouths gaped wide, drooling, swallowing air in hoarse gulps. The villagers shrieked and scattered. One man stumbled, skeletal hands clawed his legs, dragging him down into the dark. His cries for help cut short, replaced by the sound of bones snapping, flesh torn apart, wet chewing. The survivors ran blindly, their torches sputtering, until at last they burst into the village square. The communal hall loomed before them. They had gone in circles. Not one soul had escaped. The village itself was a cage of blood. Chapter 12. The Bound Sacrifice. After the failed escape, despair strangled every corner of the village. No one spoke of fleeing again. People barred their doors and clung to their families. But even within locked rooms they felt the breath of death. Then came the dawn when horror struck the heart of the communal yard. There, in plain sight, lay a young man bound tightly with rattan ropes, sprawled across the stone tiles. His belly had been slashed open, and carved into his flesh with blood were crude, jagged words: food, drink. The villagers gathered, trembling, whispering. Some tried to approach, but the bound man opened his eyes. His pupils blazed red as coals, and his lips curled into a dreadful grin. "Don't untie me. I've already been chosen. The hungry ghosts will feast on me first." From the bamboo grove drifted a rasping chorus. "Hungry, feed us." The rattan cords writhed as if alive, tightening around his body. Blood welled from the carved letters, dripping steadily onto the stones. The young man convulsed, yet still laughed through clenched teeth, like a man surrendering himself willingly to the maw of death. An elder whispered hoarsely, voice quaking, "They are binding the living now, turning them into offerings. None of us is safe." That night, villagers cowered in their huts. From the communal yard came the hideous sounds, the ropes creaking, the wet tearing of flesh, the chewing and swallowing that lasted until dawn. By morning, nothing remained but coils of blood-soaked rattan and scattered shards of bone. From then on, every villager lived in dread of being chosen. No one dared step outside, look into a mirror of water, or even sleep deeply, for any night, without warning, they might wake to find themselves bound, offered as a sacrifice to hunger eternal. Chapter 13. The Bloodthirsty Coffin. One misty morning, the villagers awoke to find something unnatural in the communal hall, a rotting wooden coffin. Standing where the floor had been bare the night before, no one knew how it had appeared. Its lid was cracked open, and from within seeped the foul stench of rot and blood. The village headman, Khan, and several strong men approached cautiously. They meant to lift it and cast it into the river. But the moment their hands touched the wood, the coffin creaked, and the lid swung wide. A blast of icy, fetid air rushed out. Inside was only darkness, bottomless, suffocating. From its depths came a voice, low and hollow. "Come in. Feed your belly, come." Before anyone could react, a gaunt youth from the crowd, his eyes already glowing red, screamed hoarsely, "Let me, I'm starving." He flung himself forward, climbing into the coffin. The lid slammed shut. His shrieks filled the hall, rising, breaking, then choking off. What followed were the sounds of teeth tearing flesh, bones snapping, and gulping swallows. When the villagers tried to pry it open, the coffin was silent, empty. That night, it remained in the hall. When darkness fell, the lid creaked open once more, glowing faintly with a red ember light. Those who passed nearby heard whispers in their heads. "Come inside, I will make you full." One old woman was drawn too close. By morning, only a trail of blood remained, leading straight into the coffin. Again, it was empty inside. The villagers tried everything. They bound it with chains of iron. They doused it with fire. But each night, the coffin stood untouched, waiting, and when the wind blew, the air filled with faint, muffled screams of those who had been swallowed whole. The elders trembled, murmuring, "This coffin is not meant for the dead, it is meant to devour the living." Chapter 14. The Fire of Sacrifice. After witnessing the coffin devour the living, the villagers could bear no more. They gathered in the communal yard and resolved, only fire could purge the curse. Fire was the last weapon humans possessed against spirits. That night, the men heaped straw, resin, and oil around the coffin. Women and children hid indoors, holding their breath. Torches flared, faces glistened with sweat and fear. Old Khan, the headman, raised his voice hoarsely, "Tonight we burn it. If we fail, none of us will survive." The torches were hurled, flames leapt high, straw crackling, smoke churning into the night sky. The coffin groaned within the inferno, its wood popping and splitting. Relief swept through the crowd, until the screaming began. From within the fire rose howls of agony. Deep and rasping, the coffin lid burst open, and charred, skeletal hands clawed into the night air. Figures stumbled out, bodies aflame, bellies grotesquely swollen, eyes burning brighter than the fire itself. The hungry ghosts had not perished. They had multiplied. The villagers panicked, scattering. One man was seized by a flaming hand. His flesh bubbled and sloughed off in seconds as he writhed, his screams drowning in the roar of the fire. Instead of cleansing, the fire had become their curse. The yard filled with blazing specters, their mouths gaping, moaning in unison, "Hungry, hungry, blood, feed us." They lurched into homes, fire trailing behind them, spreading the stench of burnt flesh and rot. The village itself seemed to ignite, not with salvation, but with damnation. Old Khan fell to his knees, eyes wide with despair. "Nothing burns them. The more we burn, the more they come. They are hunger itself, a fire that never dies." That night, the flames rose high over the valley. But it was no holy fire. It was a sacrifice to the hungry ghosts. Chapter 15. The Final Night. After the fire failed, The village collapsed into hopeless silence. No one trusted charms, prayers, or even their ancestors anymore. The people waited only for death, hollow-eyed, trembling in their homes. That night, the full moon rose. Its light was pale and cold, casting the village in a shroud of deathly white. The wind stilled, trees stood frozen, the silence was suffocating. Then, from the bamboo grove, from the fields, from the graves without incense, they came, hundreds of hungry ghosts. They dragged themselves forward, bellies swollen like bloated drums, eyes burning red, mouths torn wide. Their cries shook the earth. Hungry, hungry, blood, flesh. The sound filled every hut, rattled every heart. Infants wailed, elders collapsed in prayer. Some villagers, unable to resist the lure, staggered outside laughing madly, offering themselves to be torn apart. The ghosts gathered at the communal hall, where the half-burned coffin still stood. A crimson glow erupted from within, casting light over the nightmare feast. The ghosts crouched, gnawing at one another, devouring and tearing, yet never sated. Their frenzy only grew, and soon they lunged at the living. The village drowned in chaos. Screams split the air, blood soaked the ground until it ran in streams through the streets. Walls dripped red, shadows feasted in every doorway. The last survivor, a young mother clutching her child, hid in the kitchen's dark corner. Tears streaked her face as she whispered desperately, "Ancestors, please, spare my child." The door shattered. A hungry ghost loomed, belly grotesque, eyes burning, mouth drooling. The baby screamed. The mother held him close and cried out one final time, before both were swallowed in the sound of ravenous chewing. By dawn, the village no longer existed. Houses lay in ruins. Blood stained the earth. The altars were cold, reduced to ash. Not a single soul remained alive. On maps, the name of the village faded, erased as if it had never been. But travelers say that on nights of cold hunger, across the empty fields, you can still hear them, the weeping, the moaning, the gnashing of teeth, voices of hollow bellies that can never be filled. The village is gone now. Its name erased, its people forgotten. Only a wasteland remains, soaked in the memory of blood and despair. Yet the curse lingers. On certain nights, when hunger gnaws at the belly and the wind carries the scent of earth and rot, one might hear it still, soft at first, then louder, until it drowns the heart. The endless chorus of hollow voices, doomed to roam eternity. Hungry, hungry, blood, flesh. And then you will know, the hungry ghosts are never far.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost